For 25 years, a serial killer lived on the same street as his victims. Not a different city, not a different state, the same neighborhood, the same block. He attended community events, he fixed cars in his garage, and the women he murdered, they were found within miles of his front door. For a quarter of a century, nobody stopped him. And here is the question that should keep you awake. Was it that nobody noticed, or that nobody looked? Before this story ends, you are going to hear about a DNA breakthrough so unusual that it rewrote how law enforcement tracks killers across America. You are going to hear about a task force that was quietly dissolved before the murders even stopped. And you are going to hear what investigators found inside one man's home, a collection so disturbing it revealed a scale of violence that the public still doesn't fully understand. This is the case of the Grim Sleeper, South Los Angeles, late 1980s. The crack cocaine epidemic has fractured entire communities. Poverty, overcrowding, a police department already stretched and, by many accounts, indifferent to crimes in lower-income black neighborhoods. It is into this environment that a killer steps forward. The first documented murder attributed to Lonnie Franklin Jr. occurred in 1985. The victim was Debra Jackson, a 29-year-old woman whose body was found in an alley in South Los Angeles. Her body was found in an alley. She had been shot. Over the following 3 years, at least 8 more women were killed in strikingly similar circumstances, all in South Los Angeles, many shot with what investigators believe to be the same weapon, their bodies discarded in alleys, dumpsters, and trash heaps. Gone, one after another. The LAPD did form a task force. Detectives worked the case. But in 1988, the murders appeared to stop. The task force was disbanded. Investigators assumed the killer had died, been imprisoned, or simply moved on. Some of the early victims had been grouped under a broader investigation into a suspect then called the Southside Slayer, a designation that covered a pattern of similar crimes across South Los Angeles during that era. They were wrong to stop looking. And then something changed. By the early 2000s, bodies began appearing again in the same neighborhood with the same signature. Investigators would later place this resumed activity around 2002, though evidence would emerge suggesting Franklin may have been active even before that. Same neighborhood, same method, same signature. A journalist covering the story coined a new name, the Grim Sleeper, because the killer seemed to have gone dormant, as if sleeping, between 1988 and 2002. That gap would later be disputed. Evidence emerged suggesting he may never have fully stopped at all. This is where the case breaks open. By 2007, investigators had DNA from the crime scenes. They had a profile. What they did not have was a name to match it. Traditional DNA databases came up empty. No exact match existed. The killer had never submitted a sample. So California authorities made an unprecedented decision. They ran the DNA through a technique called familial DNA searching, scanning the database not for an exact match, but for a close relative. A partial match. Someone who shared enough genetic markers to suggest a biological connection to the unknown killer. The search returned a hit. Investigators received a partial genetic match, not to the killer himself, but to a close male relative whose DNA was already in the system. Following that lead, detectives identified the suspect, Lonnie Franklin Jr. Detectives went quiet. They did not move immediately. They watched. They followed Franklin. And in a restaurant, an undercover officer retrieved a discarded slice of pizza that Franklin had touched and partially eaten. The DNA on that pizza matched the DNA from the murders. In July 2010, Lonnie Franklin Jr. was arrested at his home on West 81st Street in South Los Angeles. He was 60 years old. What investigators found inside that home was staggering. Hundreds of photographs. Photographs of women, many of them unidentified. In a number of the images, the women appeared unconscious or otherwise unaware, leading investigators to conclude the photographs may document additional crimes. The FBI released a selection of these images publicly, hoping to identify the women. Additional victims were identified. The true scale of Franklin's violence may never be fully known. In 2016, Lonnie Franklin Jr. was convicted of 10 counts of first-degree murder. He was sentenced to death. In 2020, he died in prison before the sentence could be carried out. 10 official victims, 25 years. one neighborhood. Remember what I said at the start. Was it that nobody noticed or that nobody looked? Advocates for the victims, families argued for years that the LAPD's response was shaped by who the victims were. Black women, many with histories of addiction, many working the streets. Critics and victim advocates argued that the LAPD's response was shaped by who the victims were. Black women, many of whom had histories of addiction or were working the streets. They described it as a systemic devaluation of certain lives, one that gave a killer room to operate unchallenged for decades. The LAPD disputed that characterization, and the debate over what drove the investigative failures has never been formally resolved. The debate has never been resolved, and this is the part nobody talks about. Those photographs, hundreds of them. The FBI identified some of the women, others remain unidentified to this day, which means there may be victims whose families still do not know what happened to them. Women who are still listed as missing, or not listed at all. Lonnie Franklin Jr. is dead. The case is officially closed, but the photographs are still out there, and some of those faces still have no names. So the question is this: if a killer operates in a neighborhood for 25 years, and the institutions responsible for protecting that neighborhood consistently fail to prioritize it, who bears responsibility for the victims he was never stopped from taking?